All right, good evening. I call to order this meeting of the Board of Park Commissioners. Grace, will you please take roll?
Alderperson Defnet Ledvina.
Here.
Alderperson Esser Khan.
Here.
Randy Silky.
Present.
Ryan Jennings.
Here.
Melissa Thiel Collar.
Here.
Jim Kneisel.
Here.
And Alderperson Chandig Kundiger and teen advisors Connor Mason and Connor Goodman are excused.
Thank you, Grace. All right, next up, public comments upon matters not on the agenda. Comments made during the public comment period shall pertain only to matters under the jurisdiction of the Board of Park Commissioners. Marty, would you like to address the
I do have a
board?
couple of public comments. Thank you. Even though maybe I'm not technically public. So first and foremost, just a reminder to our public that we have the first of our beer gardens this summer coming up this Tuesday at Voyager Park, starting at 4:30. We have Courtney Paulson and Ben Boncher performing, and you'll get a nice glimpse look at the new Nelson Pavilion that's being constructed, so hopefully we see everybody there. And then the next announcement I wanted to make, as you know, a while back, Don Melikar retired, and we hired his replacement, Brian Krisnovich, who is in the audience behind me. He is our new park superintendent and has been knocking it out of the park, no pun intended. But I just wanted to formally introduce him to not only to the public, but to our park board.
Welcome, Brian. Thank you. Any other? Oh, jeez. You're really.
Grace wants to make him.
Yeah, so Brian, do you want to just stand up and give us a quick, or come to the table and give us a quick bio about yourself?
Sure.
Thanks.
You can thank Grace tomorrow.
Thanks, Grace. Yeah, so a little bit about myself. I went to school at Stevens Point. I studied urban forestry and forest recreation with a minor in soils. After college, I worked for a private tree care company in the northwest suburbs of Chicago for about 3 years. And then after that, I moved on to the city of Madison, where I was an arborist there for 6.5 years, and then been with the city of Pere now for coming up on 3 years. So, yeah, just moved to the area. I'm from Neenah originally. For 2.5 years, I was living in Menasha, and then, like I said, within the last couple weeks to a month, we moved to Pere. So,
Well, welcome aboard and go Pointers.
thank you. Absolutely.
Does that work? Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Anyone else wish to address the board under public comments? Should look. We don't have anybody. We have a few online. Okay. All right. Next up, items. Number one, consideration and possible action to approve the Board of Park Commissioner minutes from May 16th, 2024 meeting.
So moved.
Second. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item two, consideration and possible action to accept tree donation from ATC.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item three, consideration and possible action to accept tree donation from WPS. I'll move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item four, consideration and possible action to approve amendment to the WDNR grant for Perkofski dock renovations for increases in project costs.
I'd move to approve. Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item five, consideration and possible action on considerations from resident to install a volleyball court at Southwest Park. Marty, do you want to give any background for us on this? That I mean,
I don't know if I can provide a whole lot more that's in the memo, but we had a resident ask and request that we consider putting in a sand pit volleyball court at Southwest Park. It's not part of our long-range plan or our master plan for the park. However, there is room to do it in a couple of locations. However, you need to keep in mind it's just not as simple as digging a hole in the ground and putting up 2 posts and calling it a day. We have to provide ADA accessibility to the facility because it's going in new. And that could end up driving the cost up quite a bit. So we're anticipating that it could cost anywhere between $6,000 and $10,000. Seems crazy just for a sandpit volleyball court, but that's what we have to deal with nowadays in dealing with ADA compliance.
Shayna?
So is that something you think would get a lot of use? We're talking about something one resident brought forward.
You know, that's a great question. What I can tell you is that we don't have counters on our volleyball courts. We do have people that have requested, to use them. However, we do have sandpit volleyball courts that have deteriorated because of the lack of use. So, for instance, we have at VFW, we have a sandpit volleyball court there. If it doesn't get used, the grass and weeds eventually grow up through it. And people jump on it, run through it, kick it up, they stir up the weeds, and it's kind of a weeding effort, if you will, when it gets used. Well, we don't have that at VFW. I can't tell you that they're not used at all. Like I said, we don't have counters on them. We don't have a method of measuring how many people use them. But I don't think they're used a lot, but I cannot sit here and tell you that they're not used at all. That didn't help at all.
We got a list, so that's good. This is good. We have a list. We have discussion on this. Jim up next, Ryan on deck, and baseball, you're on double deck.
Thank
There we go. You're welcome.
I'm in the hole.
Yes.
Okay.
Jim,
Oh, I didn't know I raised my hand.
I thought you did.
That's all right.
You struck
I
out
was going
already.
to ask about, I noticed it at Legion Park. I think that was reconditioned a little bit.
We kind of put some TLC to the poles. So that was about it.
But generally speaking, I guess my observation is I haven't seen it used all too often at Legion.
Yeah, I can't say I can argue the point.
Okay. I don't have a question. I might have a motion later. So
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, Ryan, and then
So I guess I'm not in favor of this, but what I would be in favor of this causing us to do is to have, create a plan for Southwest Park. I'd love to see disc golf around the outside of all the fields, and we don't have a plan for the whole park. If a sand volleyball court fits in that, or pickleball courts, or more tennis courts, or anything, we should have a plan for it before we just
Yeah.
look at a single.
For what it's, there actually is a master plan for Southwest Park.
Okay.
There actually is one. It's old, because, keep in mind, it's back when we first developed the park, but there is a master plan for the park. It's been tweaked a little bit by adding that 7th soccer field. But we do have a master plan, and it does not call for a sandpit volleyball court.
Okay. I probably will make a motion that we review that at a future meeting later at the end.
Melissa.
My question was along the same lines as Ryan's, but a little bit different. We had the survey that went to all the community residents where they listed their interests. And where was sand volleyball courts on that? And also within the priority of the budget, where would this be in that priority of the budget?
The first one I can't answer because I would have to go back and find that data, so I could certainly do that. Where it would fall, let me kind of go back in time and remind you, we typically have about 20 to 25 capital projects every year. At least half of those are considered to be high priority items, meaning like we have a truck that doesn't run. We have a playground that is 27 years old and has sharp edges. It's those type of things that need to be replaced. It is certainly not going to fall anywhere near those. It's going to fall at the bottom of the list. I mean, there's no doubt.
So I know Ryan's probably thinking of a motion, but in my mind, we would first go back to that master plan that was created and then look at the budget as well before we would do anything or make any sort of motion.
Second.
Okay.
So is that a motion to table for
Yes.
further,
For further review.
Send it back.
Well,
to-
so the
Send it
action
back
is,
to
the
staff.
action is to look at installing a volleyball court at Southwest. What I would probably recommend is to deny the request, however, institute a review of the master plan for Southwest Park, which inadvertently could generate one. But at this point in time, to the request, I don't think you're looking at approving it.
Grace, can we make that motion?
Sure,
Did you get all that?
yeah. I'll listen.
And Ryan seconded.
All right, so
You have to,
do you want to
So the motion is to deny the request and to request that staff in the denial review the master plan for Southwest Park in consultation with the survey that was done, as well as the budget priorities,
capital budget?
capital
priorities?
budget priorities. Thank you.
Get all that? Mostly.
Second.
All right, any discussion around that motion? I think it's a great idea to get more information before we make a decision on this, so. Are you ready, Grace?
Yep.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
aye,
Any opposed? The motion carries. Next up, item consideration and possible action to approve bid for poured-in-place surfacing for Willems Park.
Move to approve the only bid.
I'll second that. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
aye,
Any opposed? The motion carries. Next item up, consideration and possible action to approve the revised ordinance related to dogs in parks. I will move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Ryan?
I'm kind of reading through it, and from what I'm reading, we're only allowing dogs to be walked on trails and sidewalks, according to what I read.
Yeah, there's two places, and I actually read that as well, and maybe we need a better clarification, but there's two components of the ordinance. Looks at where the dogs can go and where they can't go. So it really, those two sentences should work in unison, and I'm not sure they quite do. But if you look at where they can't go on athletic fields, they can't go on playgrounds, they can't go in buildings. So, with that sentence, everything else is open season for dogs on leashes. However, that's probably not quite in unison with the sentence that says where they can go. So I can talk with, what I would recommend is that you approve the ordinance with the slight revision prior to going to council to clean that up. And I apologize, we worked on this and I didn't notice that honestly until like this afternoon.
Yeah, because I'm not in favor, it doesn't even really seem like we're changing anything if we put it out there like this, because, it doesn't even seem like they can walk off the sidewalk onto the grass.
Melissa?
I read this as they can go on the walkways and the pathways, and they cannot go in the inside buildings and the playgrounds, picnic shelters, or sports fields, but it doesn't say they can't go in all the other areas. So I think this does say what we had instructed. It's hard to revise an ordinance to say you can go everywhere, right? So specifically saying you can go on the sidewalks, you can go on the trails, but you cannot go in these areas. So the effect of this language gets us to what we were intending.
I would disagree. I agree with Ryan. I think it's, the wording is really confusing.
But there's nothing in here that prohibits you in those other areas.
But it doesn't say.
Which is why it should say
It should say that.
that they're allowed.
Yeah, I think it would help with the confusion of it if where they talk about where the dogs can go, if we added a simple phrase of greenways or open space, I think that creates that unison of where they can go versus where they can't. Because right now, if you look at where they can go versus where they can't, we don't talk at all about just a chunk of green space out in the middle of a park. That's really not identified. I understand what Melissa's saying, and actually, having listened to attorneys now for 18 years, I do think she's right on the money because the ordinance is related to where they can't go. And there's nothing in here that says that they can't go on an open green space. That's not a playground. That's not an athletic field.
I'm not even going to be offended by your comment.
However, I'm fine with my motion, saying, work on, maybe clarifying the language before it goes to council, and that'd be great. That satisfies me. Shayna?
I think too, I'd like a better definition of the playground and what that area consists of. Most of them have a sidewalk going around them. I would hope that the intent is that dogs are not allowed beyond that sidewalk.
I know what you're saying. I don't know if we're going to have a successful attempt at defining that because, all of our playgrounds are different. Some have sidewalks, some don't.
Okay.
Is it the wood chips? Is it the fight? Is it the, and what is considered playground? It's a great question. It's a great thought. I can talk with Eric. Maybe you want to table it and I can go back with Eric and I can attempt. I don't know if we're going to be very successful with that, but we could try.
I'd rather not table it just because it's going to get it set back another month, right?
Well, probably, it really would get set back about 2 months because it has to come back to park board and then.
Yeah, I'd rather just deal with it at council.
That's.
If you guys trust
I'm
us.
okay. I'm fine. Let's get the ball rolling. That's the way I
Yeah.
look at it. It's like, let's get it rolling. But Ryan?
And I'm fine with it because if we add, to where we say only on designated walkways or pathways, parking lots serving the walkways or pathways, and designated trails, as well as areas not specified that they can't be.
Not prohibited.
Areas prohibited below.
Right.
Because right now it pretty clearly says you can't leave a designated walkway or pathway, parking lot, or designated trail. I mean, it's very clear, I think.
I agree.
There's no wiggle room on that.
Just get a lawyer in the room.
Well, it's kind of,
But
it's very enforceable right now, but it's also unfollowable toward the intent of what we're after.
Marty, you're taking some copious notes there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure things will be cleaned up by the time it gets to council.
Yep. So there's two things that we'll tackle. We'll try to define what a playground is and the definition of where they can go, which intently is trying to include general open green space.
Like, I think Ryan hit the nail on the head when he said areas not excluded
Yeah.
below.
Okay.
That I think would
Yep.
be very,
We can
very
do that.
open for now. All right, any other discussion on this topic? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Next item up. Consideration and possible action to approve small park sign design. I'll move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Next item up, review of Nelson Pavilion donor signage.
We just, this is what you approved, but this is, what's in your packet is what we approved. I just wanted to forward it to you because we received the final copy.
So this is a discussion item, so we don't need a motion on it.
Correct. We were just looking for any general comments that you might have had. So that is the main donor panel with all of our main donors and, I guess with the fundraising plan and what the council approved, all the donors up to 1,000 were not included on this panel. It's only the ones that were over. And then with the agreement with the Nelsons, this was for lack of better terms, it's a signature plaque. It's actually a story behind Dave and Rita Nelson. And then our naming parts of the facility, so the multipurpose room and the patio, which we're still looking for a donor. This is what that sign would look like. And it's intended to match with, obviously, the theme that you picked out originally.
Looks good to me. All right. Next on the discussion items, discussion on park shelter rental policy.
Yeah, but before we went and dove into suggesting and recommending action on a rental policy, we wanted to just get your input. We have been, and Grace can vouch for this, we've been pounded, I would say, ever since COVID about people canceling and how it's unfair. And we'll get a call, like, no joking, we just had a call. It was an 80th birthday party for a grandma. The grandma came down with COVID. So the person of honor can't even be at the party. So in our current policies, we don't refund, we don't transfer. Now, I understand we have to have some checks and balances, but that's kind of a bad PR thing, if we're not able to work with the donor in that type of scenario. So we have to have something in place. So I kind of recommended some thoughts of what we could go with that provide us some flexibility to work with people that are in challenging times of trying to rent the facility. So if you like what you see, we can clean it up, bring it back for approval, and then look at implementing that down the way.
I think it's a great idea to provide some flexibility. So please clean it up and bring it back in July. Anyone else?
Okay.
All right, there you go. All right, next up, review of draft facility condition analysis for the ice arena. We have, is it Dwight is here to talk
Dwayne.
with us?
Dwayne Grove.
Dwayne.
So, so real quickly, I just want to give a short intro. So Dwayne Grove is from Somerville, and they are our consultant that you recommended hiring and that the city hired. And the facility condition analysis of the ice arena, I wanted to remind everyone and for the public, the intent of it was to gauge the condition of the facility and its long-term sustainability. So the intent wasn't to try and, say it's going to be around 80 more years. The intent was, what is its current condition, and can it sustain itself with repairs and such? So Somerville's been in and out of the facility quite a bit over the last couple of months. They worked with Brown County Ice Management. They looked at all the different facets we asked. Dwayne and I have talked quite a bit with their draft. It was cleaned up a little bit, and actually, even from what you have, there's been some cleanup even between then and now. So and again, I don't want to get into it because it's a lot of minor things, but there's been some cleanup in there. And so for tonight, what our main goal for tonight is to listen. Dwayne's going to give a very short presentation on their analysis that they did. We can ask questions, do whatever you'd like, but the intent is to give him questions and information to clean up the draft plan to make it a final plan. So, we don't want to get into what are our next action steps, because, that's a conversation, for another day, obviously. But today's goal is to just get us to the point that we can develop a final plan. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dwayne, and he promised to be short, sweet, to the point.
Yes, great, thank you. Question about how do we get this
Here,
to the,
yeah, let me- There we go. Do you want the PDF or do you want that one?
No, just hit play to make it play. A little, next one, right there. Okay, great, okay.
I'll let you
Yes,
navigate.
so, yeah, again, my name is Dwayne Grove with Somerville Architects and Engineers. I'm a senior project architect, and there was a lot of people working on this particular project, not just me. We had a team of 3 other engineers looking at plumbing, HVAC systems, and electrical systems. We also hired 2 other consultants, JDS Professional Services, to do the site, just look at the site in general, the hardscape out around the building, and also Kyle Gillespie from Rink Tech. They already have the service contract for the facility and also were involved in replacement of equipment, a few years ago. So this is the body of the 6 of us that came up with the information that's in the report. So we're, just to clarify real quick, we all understand where the property is. It's a very long, narrow site, and I think the long, narrow site really helps explain why it was built the way it was. Now, it was built in '74, and so we understand that maybe the long narrowness led to how it was built. It's multi-level, and if we were doing this today, I don't think we would do anything like this. The main level, simply to the west, is Broadway, and so we have the main lobby, and moving into the restrooms, you got the concession stands, the bleachers, which are all about 30 inches higher than the ice itself. And so the ice is actually down in the grade. And then the area in the back, we've got the Zamboni, and then the Deacons Adult League has their own facility in the back. And that wasn't part of the review, but we know it's back there. So when we look at the second level and the basement level is on the left, and that's below the main entrance to the building. And on the second level, there's an assembly area, space, viewing area above that. So you really have the basement level, you've got the ice level, you've got the grade to the outside, and then you've got the second floor. So you've got a whole bunch of levels, 4 levels in there right now. And that, I think, adds to the complexity of the project. One thing to remember as we're looking at old buildings, old 50, okay. There's been 11 code changes basically since 1974 where things have changed. Now, I don't know what particular code changed, what particular thing, but the most important thing is to understand is in 2002, we went to the International Building Code, the 2000 version. And since then, now we've upgraded to the 2015. So there's a lot of stuff that when we come into an old building, we say, well, we can't do that anymore, but you could do it then. Building codes are not retroactive, so you're not forced to go back in and change stuff that you've already done. If they're still doing exactly what they were meant to do and you don't change it, you don't have to change anything. But when you start changing stuff, whatever's changed needs to meet the new code. And as you start manipulating walls and changing things, maybe changing an exit path or something like that, now sometimes the code will say, well, now you got to do this and this and this, and you start reaching out. So it starts to spider web on you as you're trying to improve the facility. But if you do nothing except fix what's broken, you don't have to change anything per code. Now, you would say we probably should for insurance sakes and ADA and all that kind of stuff, but for right now, we're just looking at the stuff that's in there. The stuff that's in there is everything. Like we said, it was the parking lots, it's the exterior walls, the roof, the interior doors, building code, ADA deficiencies, also the plumbing systems, HVAC systems, electrical systems, and then the ice refrigeration system and the rink itself. Those are the things that we were charged to look at. So when we look at that, we didn't have drawings, we don't have. We got, a lot of history from, Don Chilson and from Marty and from others about what's happened over the years. So we take that information, we look at what we see. So we're only, we don't have a body of research to grasp onto in the back to figure out how stuff got the way it is. But as we look at this stuff, we've organized our findings into 5 categories. Do you need to fix it right away? Should it be addressed soon, in the next couple of years? Or is it a little further out, 3 to 5 years, maybe it's 5 to 10 years, or long-term, even 10 plus? How long is the roof really gonna last? Should we be putting away a little bit of money now? Because we know 10 years from now, you're gonna spend, $200,000 to replace the roof. That kind of planning. So we took all that, and in the back of the report is the spreadsheet. That's just an Excel spreadsheet that we'll turn over to Marty when we're done. So we've listed the priorities of the items, the discipline of what the item is. Is it architecture? Is it civil? Is it electrical? What the item is. And then an opinion of probable costs of what we think it will cost to fix whatever it is. And again, it's an opinion of probable cost based on our experience dealing with buildings all the time, in addition to national averages through RS Means, which is a national database of construction costs. So we've got a large source of information to draw upon. Some of the items that are in here I've listed there as professional recommendations for the betterment of the building, meaning you really should do this. You don't have to, but if you're building a new building, we would do it, right? To be sure. So this was the spreadsheet, and I'm not going to go through every line item because there's a lot of items on there. If you were to do a working session, you could sit down and say, okay, let's take a look at these, let's explain them, let's cross them out and come up with a list of what we really think we need to do. That's what this spreadsheet is meant to do. So there's 2 pages to that, and bottom line, this is what we come down with the projected maintenance cost to keep the facility going. Now, we could probably take out some of our recommendations and get stuff down a little bit, but so there's some immediate work that should be done. The biggest thing we're putting within the next 2 years is obviously the ice sheet itself. It's a sand sheet, there's no heating underneath, it frost heaves, that's what the facility is for, that's where the money should probably be spent first. But we put it 2 years out because it takes time to get drawings done, get funding approved, and that kind of stuff. So we pushed it a couple years out. The next red one is also part of the ice facility, and that would be the desiccant humidity or dehumidification system. To keep the air dry within the facility. That's looking at like $200,000 for that system. And then also the chiller, or excuse me, the condenser unit that's outside, the thing that's up on the platform, that creates the coolant that goes into the chiller. Eventually that's going to have to be replaced. And that's one of those rainy day things where we're going to have to do it. Let's put money aside every now and then to get ready for that, because when it fails, you're going to have to do it all at once. I just want to point out one thing where we've got the $900,000 for the heating plant, which actually is really the ice sheet itself. That assumes that it would be a concrete sheet below the ice, not sand. So Kyle's from Rink Tech had said sand would be maybe $600,000 as opposed to $900,000 for a concrete. I put the worst case scenario in there. So if you've got concrete, now you've got a surface that if it doesn't have ice on it, could be used for other things. And that's where, as you start using it for other things, then other code requirements start coming into play. So it's a big complicated spaghetti that once you start picking off what you want this facility to be, then you can start understanding what the true costs long-term are going to be. So real quickly, just to go through a couple of the things we had already talked about, the replacement of the ice sheet itself. Dehumidification actually comes up twice. Our HVAC engineer looked at what it would cost to replace the system that's there now. And then Kyle looked at the cost, looked at the cost of what it would cost for the desiccant system. And that's just a more high-tech system to remove the humidification or the moisture in the air. And that's what ice facilities are using now. You use desiccant refrigeration or systems to remove moist air in cold environments. And that's why they're specially used for ice rinks. And then I said is the condenser outside. Civil looked at the exterior, and I also agree with this, and I'll talk about this. There's no concrete coming up to the building. There's no stoops. It's just asphalt on grade. Asphalt on grade, as it gets cold, is going to frost heave like this. And right now, both of the entrances have more than a ½ inch between the walking surface and the building. That ½ inch is critical because that's ADA. You can't have a step greater than a ½ inch. In my costs for this, it would be replacing this with a concrete stoop, which has a 4-foot frost wall. It's not going to heave. You maintain that perfect ½ inch to create ADA accessibility to get into the building. Because if you're rolling in a wheelchair, anything higher than ½ inch is going to be rough. As we look around the building in general, there's little things like there's downspouts that are missing and the water comes straight down from the roof. It churns along the foundation wall and it forms these big ruts and stuff. You can see them on the south side of the building. when the building was built, I can't believe that they actually drained all the water of that higher section to the front and then had a scupper, maybe they had a downspout that came straight down. And the thought was recently that there was water coming into the basement locker rooms. And once they removed and added the piping in there, that blue piping, to get the water away from the building, then the moisture in the basement went away. So there's some correlation then between that roof water coming down there and wanting to get it away from the building. So really that should go into a drain that goes into the swale around the corner. This picture is the exit doors on the north side of the facility, and there's like an 8-inch step there. And here's a little blow up of what that is. So you've got the bleachers, and then you've got this big open spot, and then you've got a set of double doors. The double doors, the width is okay. That gets your exit requirements out. The number of people you need to get out, that satisfies it. That's where it ends. Right now, there's a knob that you have to open to get out, and the inactive panel doesn't get out. You have to pull those little things top and bottom to push that out. So none of that meets today's code, plus you have a drop. So one of my recommendations here was that the doors get replaced with the panic bar hardware, right there, right? And then in addition to a stoop built on the outside. Because what happens, and it's been proven in other mass exit events, is you're going to open the door, you're going to step down, you're going to trip, you're going to fall. All the people in back of you are just going to stumble over you on the way out, right? Maybe there's not going to be a fire here, but again, a mass exit event could be anything. A tornado could be, God forbid, a shooter. You never know, but this is one thing that should really get addressed. There's little storage rooms built here and there, and they really need to be 1 hour rated, a 1 hour rated room, right? Because you don't want a fire spreading outside of that. Today's code would require that. This would be something that maybe the fire inspector would catch on review as they go through yearly or whatever to look at stuff like that. In here I say construct a family toilet, and that would be a means to address the ADA function that you don't have enough toilets, you don't have any ADA toilets in the facility. So if we start messing with the toilets, then you need to enlarge the toilets to match the count of what's actually the occupant load of the building. And right now that would be 4 men's fixtures and 7 women's fixtures. Right now you only have on this main level 2 and 2. So you can't alter these without upgrading. However, to meet ADA accessibility, you could create a second ADA family toilet room that would allow ADA accessibility, plus the family toilet room concept. You've got little kids or you've got seniors that might need help. You need more than one person inside the restroom anyway. It's a good thing to have, and we would put our regular toilet rooms, plus we have at least one family toilet room in all of our public buildings. Moving on to plumbing issues, the water tank and the water heater, they're old. They could end at any time. You're going to have to start thinking about the replacement value of those. In the shower area downstairs, I noticed there's epoxy flooring, but some of the drains have been covered such that you can't even get into the drain to get it cleaned out. And I guess we're told that some of them are clogged. That's something that can be fixed, doesn't require any other code implications to it, but it should really be done. Insulating in the mechanical room, hot water pipes, typically all the new mechanical rooms, all the hot water piping is insulated throughout. And in addition, as we go to HVAC issues there in the center, all the ductwork is also totally insulated. You've got supply air coming down, or supply air leaving the heater, you've got combustion air coming into the furnace, and you've got return air coming back down to be recirculated. Typically now that is all insulated for the energy codes. A little thing like on the left, there's a cap that usually sits on top of the flue vent that goes down to the furnaces. That should have a little rain cap on it to prevent water from going down. We did find that there was some rusting and degradation in the basement where that pipe ends, and we notified Brown County, and we were told that they were going to be addressing that right away. So that was taken care of. The rooftop air handler, which is above that assembly area on the second floor, that's been replaced at some time. But what's odd is it doesn't have what's called an economizer. And basically what that does is allow you to pull in outside cold air rather than turning on the compressors to create air conditioning. So it's like free cooling to pump that in. So that also means that there's no fresh air coming into that upper level that this serves. And the fresh air requirements, every room has a changeover rate of so many CFM, cubic feet per minute, of fresh air coming into the building. Keep the building healthy, keep the occupants healthy, keep it full of clean air. Right now, that unit isn't doing that. So that would be something that would need to, or could be addressed simply by replacing that with a new unit. For electrical issues, there is no fire alarm system. In a public building like this, we would expect a fire alarm, pull stations, fire alarm system. Back in the Zamboni area, there's some old distribution and electrical panels. There's a lot of moisture back there. There's a lot of stuff. Those panels should really need to be replaced. There's a lot of rust on the outside. So if that's on the outside, we can only imagine what's on the inside. Now, we're not authorized to take that stuff apart, but someone should get in there and look at that to be sure that the electrical distribution and those panels remain safe. Lighting controls is another thing we recommend. Right now, occupancy sensors are required in all public buildings, and I'm trying to find yours here. It could be on the light switch. But right now, those little switches are the light switches. So if you leave the light on, as we understand the system we're looking at now, is they would stay on. So lighting controls are sort of a default measure to ensure that the lights go off if no one's in the room. So there's a lot of stuff in the report. You need to look at it, go to the facility, research it, ask us questions. But I think even before you do that is what's the long-term vision for the facility? And once you determine what that is, that'll help answer what you have to do. The report goes forward and says, if you want to maintain exactly what you have in exactly the configuration, you'll need to maintain and repair this equipment. That'll keep you going, but it won't replace the fact that it's a 50-year-old building with code deficiencies from the code revisions, and it doesn't meet accessibility requirements of the ADA. So that's basically what this report was for, is to set the groundwork for the next phase, which is how do we address these issues? So
Just a quick follow-up on that, and please tell me if I'm wrong on this. So there's two things also with this plan that I think are important to note. The long-range capital suggestions that Dwayne and his team provided did not account for inflation. So, correct?
Right, yeah. We didn't want to go out because you could decide to do something now rather than the future, or push it off to the future, so it would skew the numbers.
Yeah. So when you look at, there's a cost of $100,000 in 5 years from now, it's not going to be $100,000. It'll be a little more than that. The other part, too, is, as Dwayne alluded, we have a 50-year-old facility that essentially there's nothing ADA compliant about it. Doesn't mean we have to make it ADA compliant. The numbers that you are looking at, other than the family ADA toilet addition that he recommended, it really doesn't include correcting ADA compliance issues. So for instance, if it's not highlighted in the report, if we wanted to renovate the upstairs and make it more user-friendly and such, doesn't include money that you would have to put in an elevator. Doesn't include those type of funds. It really, again, pulling out the family toilet recommendation What it's recommending is changing or fixing like for like, which allows you to stay within the old code that it was built under. But it's not making the facility ADA compliant at all. And it's hard to do that. So if you were to take the restrooms and say, well, we want to make them all ADA compliant. Well, you can do that in 50 different ways. I mean, you could take part of the building and make ADA compliance. You could put on an addition. Both of those are extremely different costs. So it's hard to project that type of cost until you really get into that. So those are, am I accurate?
Yes,
Okay.
right, yes.
So I thought those are two important points to kind of remember, because the numbers are, I mean, they're head scratchers. I mean, they're not low numbers. They're kind of staggering. But they're probably a little worse than what the actual graph says, looking long range.
Questions for Dwayne or Marty? Go ahead.
I just want to clarify this ADA issue. You do no construction, nothing, right? At the moment you decide you want to do something with the bathrooms, they need to be brought into ADA compliance. But as the building sits right now with no construction, assuming we're doing nothing with the building, are there things right now with the building that are out of ADA compliance that need to be fixed right now?
I would say yes, and that's going to be the front stoop. You need to get into the building, right? So once you're in the building, then you need a toilet facility for someone in a wheelchair.
So the two things right now, well, I saw the back stoop as well.
Yeah, the back stoop
The back
as well,
exit.
because, yes.
Well, the northern stoop.
The northern stoop.
Northern stoop.
Right, it's not the back.
So the northern, the front, and the bathrooms are really the big ADA issues right now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Dwayne or Marty? My curiosity, Dwayne, you talked about a $300,000 difference when it talks about replacing the ice sheet between sand and concrete. What's the life expectancy of the sand surface versus the concrete surface?
I wish I could tell you. I would have to go back to, Ring Tech to get you that.
All right. I would be curious about that. And then this really is Marty, and I don't expect an answer tonight. But if we go with concrete, what would we use that building for? What would we get $300,000 value?
I mean, ultimately, I don't know if that would be our decision. Right now, we lease out operations to an outside organization, which right now is Brown County Ice Management. It would be up to them, because they're the programmer of the building. I'm sure there are things that you could do. I do know as well that Don has indicated that there used to be the need to run that facility during the winter. It's just that he couldn't, because if he left in the ice year round, the frost would continue to heave and it won't stop. So he had to take the ice out so the frost would go down. So it's very possible that they might choose to run it year round.
So those would be questions we would need to ask Don.
Yeah.
Or at some point down the road before we just make a decision on
Yeah,
where to go here.
I don't know if, I think the topic of concern is that the floor is broken. How it would get fixed, I think, is a question that likely could be answered another day, because I don't know if it's vital to what we're trying to accomplish right now.
Got it. But just out, those are questions down the road. We have a lot of questions down the road.
And again, just to remind, what we're trying to do right now is ask questions of Dwayne that allows him to put the stamp that's on it that says final. So are there things in here that you would like to see that, is there information in here that maybe you would like to see different, changed, or added?
Or clarified, yeah.
Clarified. So life expectancy of a sand surface versus a concrete surface would be something I would like to know when we look at this report. Shana, did you have questions?
No, it was more related to what you were asking
Going
about
toward.
the usage.
Okay. Ryan, do you have more?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, Ryan.
So right now this facility is kind of like 3 levels. We've got the basement, we've got the ice sheet, and then we've got the, basically the general entry and viewing level.
Right.
And right now, we don't really have a way to get people, I mean, ideally, everything would be on the same level, correct?
Right. Or means to get there, because right now you don't really, other than there is the ramp that goes down to the ice and then also down in the locker rooms. You could have ADA access sort of from that ramp to get to the ice sheet itself.
Okay.
But you'd really want, in a new facility, we'd want to have ADA access to the sheet itself.
Right, so I guess I'd be interested in what it would take if we redo the ice sheet, if we bring that up to the level of
Oh,
everything else. I
come
mean,
up instead of, yeah.
Right,
That would affect the locker rooms down below. That's why I was wondering if, because the building is long and narrow on that long, narrow site, maybe they felt they couldn't go anywhere else with the locker rooms except down. And that's why they created that long ramping that comes
well,
up to the,
at one point toward the end there, you had mentioned that ideally you would get rid of the lower locker rooms, bring that up, you do an
Yes.
addition on that west side, and then along with that, it would be interesting to have the ice sheet, if you would go to that extent, bring that ice sheet up to the same level. So I don't know if
Yeah.
that information is available or if that's significantly more expensive than rebuilding the ice sheet itself.
Well, keep in mind, so what you're asking, Ryan, this is just my opinion, but I think what you're asking is outside the scope of what we asked Somerville to do. Because remember, Somerville,
Fair enough.
yeah. 'Cause what you're going down the line is action steps. How can we correct the problem? And, we'll be doing that, soon enough.
I know this is a complicated issue of just focusing on the condition report without looking.
Jumping to
at
the
next
next
steps.
step, yeah.
Shayna, did you have something
Well,
else?
Just speaking to what Ryan was talking about, because you do have the last page, or second to last page of the report suggests improvements to modernize. You're saying we shouldn't be, should that
That's-
be in the report then?
That's, there's a small segment of potential recommendations, I guess, if you will. That's not really the intent of the analysis. In the RFP, we asked them to provide a cost opinion of doing a full replacement. Because originally when we started this, the thought was, how much does it cost to fix it? How much does it cost to start over? Well, we never imagined that there'd be, it was tough to imagine at the time in between. And that's, kind of the road that we were, that would start going down. And we didn't ask, Somerville to really look at ripping off, and Dwayne actually brought it up, and he alluded to it a little bit in there. But they alluded that an option to consider instead of building a brand new one is rip the front part of the building off, and that corrects a large amount of your ADA problem. But now that's just a little teaser of information and.
Because that still doesn't address the rink and
Correct.
all of the other
Correct.
things that you identified in the report.
Yep.
Okay.
Anything else we'd like Dwayne to clarify, or do we feel there's anything else that is missing from the report that we'd like to ask Dwayne and his team to add to the report?
You need to open the meeting.
Yeah, I definitely would entertain a motion to open the meeting so that we can, perhaps interested parties have more they'd like to know about it.
Second.
Second. All those in favor of opening the meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. For those who wish to address the board, we'd ask you to come sit down at the table. Please state your name and address, and then we'd love to hear what you think might be needed in the report or clarifications that could be helpful to us in making decisions down the road.
Thank you. My name is Mike Thompson. I live at 1627 Colony Drive in De Pere. I just had a question on the front page, or toward the front of the document that you shared, Dwayne. you had a schematic of the rink and kind of the facility, that first floor. You had specifically called out an area within there that called out the Deacons Adult League, not part of the FCA. That is only Deacons only utilize a small portion of that. The other half of that large area is utilized by the De Pere High School hockey team. So, I mean, we don't have that as a clarification here, and I think it's a value add as the board begins to have these discussions.
Yeah, we'll update the drawing to reflect.
That's all that I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the board about the condition report? Things that may be missing, things that we would like to add to it, clarifications, questions? Seeing none, a motion to go back into closed session is in order.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We're back in closed session. And just at this point, I guess I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight to listen in. And hopefully you'll have time now to think about things, and please share your thoughts with us moving forward. And if you can do those types of things prior to the meeting, that gives us time to kind of ruminate on your ideas as well. Marty and Grace are wonderful about distributing items to us. If you send them to us, send them to them electronically, they can get it out to us. So thank you. Other questions for Dwayne or Marty? Clarifications, additions to the condition use report, facility report? Shayna?
I guess I would ask, I'm sorry if I missed this in the report, why that part of the building wasn't included.
Oh, you mean that locker room? It's actually not property of the city of De Pere. The locker rooms were built many years ago in a combination effort between St. Norbert and the Deacons program.
Okay.
And there's a lease agreement for them to be on the property, but it is actually theirs. Over time, about 4 years ago, St. Norbert sold their portion over to De Pere, the Voyagers program.
Okay, thanks.
Good question. All right, if not, Dwayne, thanks for coming tonight. We look forward to a finalized copy in the near future.
So Randy, just a sidebar. So I would anticipate with the minor revisions that are going on that Dwayne will probably have a final draft for next month's meeting. The question I would have for you, and maybe this is a discussion that we need to talk about a little more, but would you want the topic of just accepting the final draft on the next park board, or do you want in addition to that, because I think that needs to be its own, but do you want to right away dive into action steps and long-range vision on what to do now with the plan? Because I think it would be an injustice if we wait 6 months to, we need to start working on this. I don't know, I don't have an answer for you how that looks, but I don't know if you want to start tackling it in some capacity right away next month. And the reason I asked the question is we have a very interested party here right now. We have other interested parties that are probably listening and will be calling me tomorrow. It'd be nice to let them know, you need to prepare for next month because we're going to start this, or you got until August, before we kickstart. I don't know if you're prepared to answer that right now, or...
I personally am very concerned about the ADA issues, and I think we can't sit on that.
So 2 items on the agenda for next month.
Okay.
1, accepting the final draft, and then 2 action items to begin to address the concerns,
Okay.
the needs. Thanks. Next item under discussion is staff update on loud music concern at VFW pool.
Do you want me to summarize?
Well, we got the memo. So, anything new since 12 June?
Now, the only thing that I can tell you is on Monday or Tuesday, I actually walked out there myself and walked the perimeter of the pool, and I could barely hear any music. Very similar to what Trista originally reported to. all I could hear were kids screaming. I walked out on the other side of the tennis courts, and just like Trista said, it was very unique. I couldn't hear the people anymore, but I could hear music. In my opinion, it wasn't loud, but I could hear it. Trista indicated that we are below the decibel level. So like if we were to be challenged for the ordinance, we're under that decibel level. Even with that, I actually went back and I talked with staff, and we tweaked the angle of the speakers again. So the thought is we're going to keep kind of tweaking until we can maximize the best location for the least amount of sound travel. So we're under the decimal level, which is good, but we're still kind of tweaking it a little bit to try to get it a little bit better. Because there's no doubt I could hear music, but I don't. But again, I didn't think it was loud, but I also didn't live there. But in fairness, I think we owe it to try to be good neighbors and do the very best we can to keep that as low as we can. So we're going to keep working on it.
Future agenda items. If done, a motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We are adjourned at 7:31. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight.